Inflammatory Thomas, otherwise known as the Sitting Buddha, or as Bill Riley has lately begun to call you, the Wicked Witch of the East. A perfectly marvelous 90th birthday party. And isn't it wonderful that all of your friends and relatives and co-workers and neighbors and all the people who are near and dear to you could be here in this corner to celebrate with you tonight. All two of them. Darling, I think that if Sarah McClendon were here, there'd be three. Darling, I think you look absolutely smashing. How in the world do you ever do it, darling, at your age? I mean, God knows life is no picnic and you never can tell about things, but I think, frankly, from what I've heard, it's perfectly amazing that you've survived the White House press corps this long at all. Well, I just came from another party over at the White House and absolutely everybody was there. Barack Hussein Obama. Can't wait to go to Asia, obviously. His wife Michelle wearing a sleeveless affair because Michelle Obama still thinks she has the right to bear arms. Joe Biden, who took a break from watering his hair plugs, putting his foot in his mouth, and Jill Biden and Bill and Hillary Clinton, and absolutely everybody was there. All those people you read about absolutely rolling and having a really decadent time. Except, of course, for Rahm Emanuel, David Axelrod, Jim Jones, Larry Summers, and about 500 other people who are on their way out the door. And I said to them, well, I've simply got to be going because I'm on my way over to the other side of town to the American Newswomen's Club to celebrate the 90th birthday of Helen Thomas. And they all said, who? Well, I said, Helen Thomas, you know, the legendary White House reporter who covered 10 presidents from 5 books, broke the glass ceilings of the National Press Club, the Gridiron Club, the White House Correspondents Association, God knows what else, who is an absolute fixture at Mama Aisha's, who can belt out a torch song, and who shares a birthday with another terrorist, Barack Hussein Obama. And they all said, who? For 57 years until it was taken over by the Moonies. I used to stand outside of the Calvert Apartments every day on Calvert Street, waiting for the L6 bus, wearing fashionable clothes for television from the waist up, and from the waist down, wearing unfashionable clothes for mother. The one who, when she wasn't at Mama Aisha's at night, was over at the place she absolutely adores, the Prime Rib, with her decadent friends, Eleanor Williams, Ginny Daly, and Mary Daly Gorman. And they absolutely, Helen and Eleanor, always insisted on bringing their own brandy snifters. And the minute they walked in the door, somebody always said, there goes Helen Thomas. And then Eleanor Williams would run over them with her wheelchair. And the other two with their sensible tote bags following close behind. Trying to dine, filling up their glasses with Hennessy. And then when they got ready to leave so they could go to piano bars, they absolutely walked out the door with brandy sifters filled with booze, and the maitre d' would say, thank you and have a marvelous evening, at which point Eleanor Williams would run over his feet, giving him the phrase, don't drink and drive. Oh, you did, well, darling, they didn't tell me that part. Only when I walked in with my own the other day, they took it away from me. And they all said, who? And I said, Helen Thomas, the correspondent who worked for UPI for 57 years. Oops, what was I going to say? Helen Thomas. Oh, who had the best seat in the White House press briefing room and got to ask the first question and make the last statement.
And was evicted.
Until a certain rabbi with a video cam asked her a question and she gave the wrong answer. And they said, oh, her. Helen Arab Thomas. Darling, I'm so sorry all my friends didn't show up. I mean, people can be so tacky. But what does it matter as long as you're all here and it looks like you're having a marvelous time. now that you're, well, I could go on stage.
He's been on stage.
Well, now that you're 90, it's time to look back. Oh, for the days when you were 89.
Look a day over.
You don't look a day under. Oh, for the days when you were 89, and Barack Obama brought you the birthday cake and sang happy birthday to you, and then you got to ask your famous trick question. Mr. President, can you think of one single country in the Middle East that has nuclear weapons?
Right.
To which he replied, Helen Thomas, I don't like to speculate. At this point, Jimmy Carter raised his hand and said, I know. Israel, 150 are nuclear weapons. And thank you, Jimmy Carter, for sharing. And yes, those marvelous 80s when you got to work with George W., your very favorite president. The one who only allowed you to ask one question before he banished you to the last row. And that question was, Mr. President, what was the reason you really wanted to go to war? At which he kept saying, excuse me, Helen, excuse me, Helen, excuse me, would you please let me answer this question?
No.
Maybe because you called him the worst president in American history.
Could be.
Oh, the days to be 75 when you celebrated your birthday the same time as Bill Clinton. And you got to star in that marvelous videotape of his final days in office when he was giving his press conference and the only reporter in the room was Helen Thomas, only she was sleeping. Finally, she had been snoring for a long time. She woke up and saw Bill Clinton standing there and said, are you still here? Oh, to go back to the days of the 60s when Ronald Reagan could not wait for you to say, thank you, Mr. President, so we could get the hell out of there and have more questions. In the days where she learned to wear red, because she noticed that Ronald Reagan called on more reporters who were wearing red. Oh, to be back in the days of the 50s, when Richard Nixon took you on his historic trip to China, and you were wildly romantic and madly in love with the love of your life, Doug Cornell.
Right.
And oh, to go back to the 40s when JFK said, Helen, you'd be all right if you didn't have a pen and a pad in your hand. And the night you went to that St. Patrick's Day party, you said, isn't it marvelous you're celebrating St. Patrick's Day at this party? And he said, what are you doing here? And the time you wanted to go on that trip with him, and you ended up not going on the trip, and you were standing in line behind those stupid ropes, and he said, Helen, aren't you going with me? And you said, no, they won't let me. And he said, well, you get to go on the best trips to church. And oh, to be in your 30s when you worked for UPI for $24 a week. And oh, to be in your 20s when you worked as a copy editor at Washington Daily News.
Right.
And oh, to be in your 10s when you were the 7th of 9 children born of Lebanese immigrants, George and Mary Thomas, who came to the United States in 1903 with only $17 in their pockets.
Well, we're so glad our father didn't miss the vote.
I'm trying to think what Stephen Colbert would do right now. Anyway, darling, you're 90, and now many presidents have come and gone, and many rich years have gone by, and Christine O'Donnell still thinks she won. As Fidel Castro said to Al Newhart when he was asked, what's the difference between democracy in Cuba and democracy in the United States? Fidel Castro said, I don't have to answer questions from Helen Thomas. So in closing, I simply have to be going, I'm off to another party, a worst persons in the world party, for Keith Olbermann, Juan Williams, and Rick Sanchez, and you're invited. And I should simply like to say happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy 90th birthday, Helen Inflammatory Thomas, darling. There's no thing you can't still do, even at your age. Happy birthday.